question of when the fighting will actually stop.
We're achieving major strides toward completing our military objective. And some people could say they're pretty well complete. We're ahead of our initial timeline by a lot. We're very proud to be involved in this, and it's going to be ended soon.
Well, complete? If we're really using degrees of completeness here, I hate to use different. Well sounds a lot less confident than very. Especially when all you'd say is that some people could say that. Which some people are we talking about? And if this mission is actually complete, why does it need to be ended soon? And when exactly is soon?
Are you thinking this week it will be over?
No,
Are you
but
talking
soon.
about days?
I think so.
Okay,
Very soon.
okay, so not this week, but very soon. And in Trump's world, that leaves, well, plenty of room to escalate.
We could call it a tremendous success right now as we leave here. I could call it, or we could go further, and we're going to go further.
We could call it a success now, but he could also go further. Maybe. Actually, he is going to go further. There is one thing Trump seems very certain about, and it's a new justification for the war. He says if he didn't act, Iran was going to try to take over the entire region.
If we did not hit them, they were going to take over the Middle East. They had thousands and thousands since their last hit. They had thousands and thousands of missiles and everything else. Those weapons were aimed at Middle Eastern countries that had nothing to do with this.
Trump also clarified what success looks like, getting Iran to abandon its nuclear ambitions.
You said earlier that we've already won in many ways, but we haven't won enough. What do you consider enough? What's your baseline?
Where they're not going to be starting the following day to develop a nuclear weapon. Where they'll look at that man and some other people from the administration and say, all right, we're not going to do it. They were not willing to say that.
The problem now, a senior Iranian official says they aren't going to be saying anything more to the United States.
I don't see any room for diplomacy anymore because Donald Trump has been deceiving others and not keeping his promises. And we experienced it in 2 times of negotiations that while we were engaged in negotiation, he struck us.
Trump's immediate concern right now is not actually uranium, it's oil. Because if you can't keep the Strait of Hormuz safe for ships to carry oil out, well, he's got a major problem that doesn't have an easy fix. And he knows it because tonight he wrote this. If Iran does anything that stops the flow of oil within the Strait of Hormuz, they will be hit by the United States of America 20 times harder than they have been hit thus far. Want to bring in the efforts, retired Army Major General Randy Manner, who facilitated the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Iraq in 2010, and CNN global affairs analyst Karim Sajapour. He's an expert on Iran who regularly advises U.S. and European officials. Glad to have both of you here as we are trying to navigate the complexity of the president's statements, and we're of course trying to make sense of the conflicting messages, of course. Do you think, Karim, that it has any effect in trying to force the Iranians to do what he wants?
So far, it hasn't had the intended effect, Laura. I think it's not clear in the president's own head what his precise endgame is. Is it to degrade the capabilities of the Iranian regime, or is it to change the character of the Iranian regime? He's in some days said both of those things. And I think the Iranian regime is in survival mode. The leader was assassinated, Ayatollah Khamenei. They've chosen his successor, the son, Moshtaba Khamenei. And I think right now they're very much in fighting mode. They're not in compromise mode.
You heard, don't seem to be in diplomatic mode either. There's a trust issue, as you heard from that very discussion. And in general, I want to talk about the timeline here, because on the one hand, Trump insists the war will end very soon, his words. But his Defense Department, very important to think about this, says that they have only just begun to fight. And you got a senior Iranian official telling CNN that they are ready for a long war. These are very different circumstances as described. Is there any chance of this war actually ending very soon, whatever that might mean, if all of the objectives are met?
So my first thoughts are with all of the military members that are over there in combat, as well as, of course, their families that are here very worried about them. I think the one thing that every American should be concerned about is the tremendous ambiguity and the lack of cohesion and explanation of why are we even doing this. It seems like someone has been Googling, why should we attack Iran? And they just put that into the latest press release. So I think it's all over the place. So your question about when could this be over? We don't even know what the criteria, the reason for attacking, what the criteria are for success, because it keeps on changing based on the political whims of this administration. Again, that is not clarity to the American people, and all Americans deserve to know why our sons and daughters are in combat, risking their lives for our country.
Let me follow that for a second, because I do wonder, oftentimes we're told, well, you know, we're not going to advertise. I remember when Trump first ran for office in his first administration, it'd be silly to advertise to the world what the true thoughts of the commander-in-chief would be. Could that be a basis for why there is confusion, or is this something that you don't see?
President Bush took months to be able to educate the American people about why it was necessary to go to war in the Middle East. He developed allies in the region and developed allies within NATO and with other countries to be able to be part of the coalition. It was a united front against Iraq. In this particular case, this was nothing more than the president following the whims of the Israeli prime minister and doing this attack.
He says it's a gut feeling. He had a feeling, right?
Well, he had a feeling that last time I checked, we rely on the intelligence reports to determine what are the true risks to the United States.
Let me ask you on this, because you've got global oil prices that are putting pressure on the President of the United States, among likely other aspects of it. And today he said he wants oil tankers to show some guts, these are the words he used, and brave through the Strait of Hormuz. So both of you are kind of smirking as I see you asking the question about that, because an Iranian official insists that they control the keys to the waterway. I mean, the idea of threatening in this way to hit Iran 20 times harder if they do not allow the passage of oil, if they stop the flow of oil. I mean, how risky is it for ships to try to sail through that region?
Well, first, this is very much part of Iran's strategy to spike the price of oil. When Americans go to the gas pump and negatively impact public opinion in the United States.
As a way to stop the war.
To restrain President Trump's ambitions. And they've done this over the course of the last 4 decades. So it's not a new strategy. We should have anticipated it. The challenge for these oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz is insurance. Very few insurance companies will want to insure these massive tankers given the enormous risks. Iran can swarm these tankers with $20,000 drones, and that strategy, obviously Iran is much weaker than the United States, but so far that strategy has borne fruit for them.
Is there a security risk for those who try to, as he says, show some guts?
I think it's absurd that the administration is saying just go for it. That is not, it reflects a lack of understanding of the sophistication of the threats that are against those oil tankers. It only takes one drone to be able to get through if they send 20 or 30 after an oil tanker. So for $100,000, you can take out a multi-million-dollar tanker with its fuel, with its cargo. So I think it's naive, it's inappropriate. It's also something where the United States cannot guarantee safe passage of all of those freighters through that area without an extreme cost of U.S. resources. Forget the idea of $1 billion a day. It would be multiple billions of dollars to be able to do anything in that region. So I think this is something where we need to be able to quite frankly, negotiate, figure it out, de-escalate, and be able to provide greater security for the Middle East and lower the prices at home for oil.
Let's talk about the new leader of Iran, the former leader's son. Trump calls his rise to power a big mistake. He's being coy, though, about the new supreme leader's future. Listen.
So does he have a target on his back, and how can you say
I don't want to say whether or not he does, because that would be inappropriate.
It indeed would be, but what do you think of him as the new leader and the trajectory of his leadership?
So first, President Trump's goal in Iran was similar to what he managed to do in Venezuela, which was he detained the number one guy in Venezuela, Maduro, brought him to justice in New York, and very quickly the Trump administration was able to do a deal with his successor, Delcy Rodriguez. He was hoping to recreate that dynamic in Iran. Didn't work, just with military threats and economic pressure. So Ayatollah Khamenei ended up being assassinated. His hope, president's hope, was that he could do a deal with the successor. But what the Iranian regime has decided to do is essentially replace Khamenei with his mini-me, his son, Moshtaba H56, whose worldview is the same. And so I do
Is he well known?
he is, it's interesting you ask that question because his name is very familiar to Iranians, but his face and his voice are not familiar. He was someone who always operated kind of in the shadows. And even now, he's injured. He's essentially probably living in a bunker and hiding, trying to elude assassination. And I asked someone inside the country, how can he manage the country? And they said he's not interested in governing. He's interested in fighting.
Oh, now that is very telling. Let me ask you this, because general sources tell CNN that the Trump administration is looking to capture Iran's nuclear stockpile, and that would require, obviously, a significant number of troops, frankly, likely on the ground. How complex of a mission would that be?
It would be extremely complex. These storage facilities, which, by the way, it's interesting because the president 8 months ago said that the nuclear capability of Iran was destroyed, if we recall and go back to what he said. So now he's saying, well, we didn't do it. Not that he said those words. It would be an extremely complex operation. They're deep inside of Iran, and they're obviously well protected by ground troops as well. So it would be a significant investment. It is not the same as going into Venezuela to grab one leader. I think that let's just say it would be extremely complex, and the odds for success would be low.
Ominous. Thank you so much, both of you. General Kareem, nice to have you both on. Still ahead tonight, the